I am nearly 90 years old now, the child of one family. I was born in this setting on the western edge of Canada, not far from Victoria. It was a pristine place among the firs and cedars. I was christened Benvenuto, the Italian for welcome, but visitors have taken liberties. They have always called me the Butchart Gardens. As befits a world-famous beauty of advancing years, I appreciate a little help from time to time. I've spread a little since my youth. I now cover 50 acres. Hardly the dimensions of a sylph, I know. While I collect my thoughts, why don't I leave you to wander on your own for a bit, to see my many gardens within a garden? Now, what about some scenes from my past? I was a very ugly duckling indeed, my dears. The generosity of this man, Robert Pym Butchart, made me possible in a blighted setting, a child of industry. Here is his cement plant at Todd Inlet. He was a pioneer manufacturer of Portland cement in Canada. Technology seemed so modern then. And this is his wife, Jenny, whose remarkable imagination conceived me. My beginnings were modest. Some sweet peas and a single rose from a friend, planted in the farm fields around their home, mere steps from the quarry. Some say it all began because an acquaintance of little faith bet that you can't get anything to grow in there, Jenny. Well, where rock was too heavy to remove, it was piled. A mound of limestone created a high point from which to view this extraordinary early reclamation project. Tons of topsoil were brought by horse and cart from a nearby farm. And here Mrs. Butchart set to work. She even hung over the grim quarry walls in a bosun's chair, tucking ivy into any crevice in the barren rock. In my 20s, I became a movie star. My renown spread. First friends came to visit, then friends of friends, and all were welcomed. Until numbers made it impossible, everyone was served a cup of tea. 18,000 cups in 1915 alone. Didn't we dress comfortably then? Mrs. Butchart's sociability and sense of fun were legendary. She'd often serve tea herself. On one occasion, a gentleman visitor, unaware that Jenny had just served him tea, attempted to leave 10 cents under his cup. "Oh, no, thank you, sir," she said. "Old Mrs. Butchart would never let me accept a tip." In 1928, only 24 years after I'd made my debut, Mr. and Mrs. Butchart were awarded the Freedom of the City. And the quotation of the day couldn't have been more apt: "For their public service and kindliness of heart." In 1939, for his 21st birthday, they gave me their beloved gardens to a grandson, Ian Ross. In 1945, he returned from service in the Canadian Navy to face the daunting task of wrestling me back into shape. And oh, what a time it's been, my dears. With Mr. and Mrs. Butchart for 35 years, and with Ian and Anne Lee Ross for more than 50. Oh, the lovely freshness of spring. Now that you're getting to know me, I would like to share with you some of my vital statistics, my figures and my facts. I'm on 50 acres of a 130-acre estate. That's 20 hectares by modern years. And Ian Ross and 50 gardeners have extended my seasons with separate plantings from earliest March until late November. All of the world's gardens have their hallmarks. Mine is my forest setting, against which an unending display of color unwinds itself. Oh, the Japanese garden. Now here Mrs. Butchart brought a visitor one day, a British adventurer, Captain Frederick Marshman Bailey, who talked of a poppy named for him, which he'd recently discovered in Tibet. He was dumbfounded, thunderstruck, and relieved of a small wager when Mrs. Butchart happily showed him his blue poppy grown here from the original seed he'd sent to the Edinburgh Botanical Garden. Bailey won a coveted gold medal for his glorious discovery. More close-ups of my beauty marks. Laburnum and the handkerchief tree. Collecting statuary is another family tradition. The arbutus, largest member of the heather family. And Cornus cusa, a relative of British Columbia's dogwood. The dolphin fountain, purchased in Italy by Mr. and Mrs. Ross. Now, my assistants help me change for the summer, lifting 60,000 tulip bulbs and planting more than 300,000 flowering plants, including nemesia and pansies. Roll out the barrel, We've had evening entertainment here for years. Modern music. And today, another generation has fashioned new jewels to flatter me. Saturday nights in July and August, fireworks from Ruggieri of France. are especially choreographed for our setting by great-grandson Christopher Ross to fill my skies with fiery magic. Aren't they marvelous, my dears? And this was my 50th birthday present. Then the largest underground wiring project of its kind in North America, with thousands of hidden lights. And these are the Ross fountains, which are... but I'll tell you that story later. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. Speaking of barrels of fun, this was Just for Fun, which used to be performed at the concert lawn. 2 of the Butchart great-grandchildren performed here. Watch carefully. You'll see one. After the glitter of the night, I'm sure you'll understand that it takes more than a little effort to get me ready for the morning. I've outlasted more than one head gardener, my dears. 9 in all. And while I'm bragging, this is my second rose garden, created by Jenny on this very spot. Every beauty loves her mirror, or at least keeps it nearby, to reflect this, the garden that Jenny Butchart saved for last, with 2,500 rose plants, hybrid teas, floribundas, ramblers, pillars, in 250 varieties, roses old and new, roses from all over the world, and all backed by a blue through-white curtain of Pacific giant delphiniums. I love the names. Butterscotch, Ernest H. Morse, Iceberg, more delphiniums, American Pillar, Queen Elizabeth, Apricot Nectar, Nicole, oops, an ivy-leaf geranium, and Can-Can. And, of course, the Jenny Butchart rose. Wishes take many forms, and I suppose I've been godmother to more than a few. Now this is Taka, the Butchart boar. Friends come to rub his nose and wish for luck. And this is the Italian garden. It once a tennis court, presided over by a statue of Mercury, last faithful spectator of some long ago match. The Italian garden was created in 1928, its rectangular beds centered by a pond in the shape of a Florentine cross. Mr. and Mrs. Butchart could view it from above, from their bowling alley, swimming pool, or billiard room. This special bower, which originally held Mr. Butchart's prized pigeons, now shows collections of fuchsias or begonias. He collected them from far afield, you know. The pigeons, I mean, to add to peacocks and ornamental ducks kept in the star pond, and an ill-tempered curmudgeon of a parrot in the residence. Love the way I'm always kept so colorful. Let's have a look. Here are hyacinth-flowered candy tuft, hemerocallis, the daylily, the dahlia, whose discoverer didn't think much of it as a flower, but thought its tuber root might make a fine substitute for the potato. The unfortunately named Sal pigglossus, more happily called painted tongue. Michaelmas daisy. And what child hasn't thrilled to discover the movable jaw of the antirrhinum? Snapdragon, of course. Star Pond. And the sunken garden lake, where trout came to feed when Mr. Butchart clapped his hands. A garden is not a static creation. Mrs. Butchart certainly understood that. Her daughter noted in her diary that Mother had just returned from a 6-month world cruise, and the first day back spent 12 whole hours working in the garden. No, it's a living, breathing work of art. Some critics say it is the most difficult medium for an artist. Created to mirror a society and an era, the challenge is to maintain the essence as it evolves, with old material uncompromisingly removed to make room for better. And wherever Jenny Butchart is, she'd recognize me. I'm changed. She'd approve of that. Yet I'm still the same garden she created. Some of us get diamonds. But for my 60th anniversary, I got the Ross fountains. This fountain took shape in the imagination of Ian Ross, who designed and built it of ordinary hardware with the help of a local plumber. Behind a high fence, in an old quarry, at the bottom of the sunken garden. They just kind of made it up as they went along, this masterpiece. In the fall, some of my assistants make up one of my innumerable beds for winter. Good work! Only 59,900 more bulbs and we'll be done. And here I am in chrysanthemum time, a time of rest and restlessness and fading brilliant beauty, I'm afraid, my dears. My renowned collection of Japanese maples. Even my vital water supply is harmonized into the landscape. And so, back to the Japanese garden, where Jenny Butchart of Toronto and Isaboru Kishida of Japan in 1905 set to work planting this slope of land between the residence and the Pacific Ocean. Our recreation of the merriment of Christmases past. Holly and cedar boughs around the seed and gift store, where each year 750,000 visitors browse for hours, my dears. In this season without flowers, I've been showered with Christmas lights. The Ross fountain, prevented from performing by freezing temperatures, suggested now in glittering lights.
Strike the harp and join the chorus.
In the dining room, glimpsed in holiday finery through the conservatory windows.
My treasure. La 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 la.
a remembrance of Captain Bailey's long ago visit. Beyond our Christmas tree, the Blue Poppy Restaurant. But it doesn't end at Christmas. It doesn't ever really end, as you can see with some before and afters. Is this the tennis match that Mercury remembers? Here is where Jenny Butchart's extraordinary horticultural adventures began, where she began to scratch out the beginnings of a garden in the forest on the west coast of Canada. And in my visitor's book, nearly 90 years later, returning visitors write, bless them all, that I am more beautiful than ever.